Hello everyone, and today we'll be taking a look at the Forte Ears Macbeth. And well, this is a demo set provided to me by AVOne. Thanks to them for it really, because it's really hard to get a demo of this unit. Now the Macbeth costs about 6,000 Sing dollars, and depending where you get, that will translate to something about 4,000 plus USD. It is a expensive IEM. Of course, not as expensive as say the Fugaku, but 4,000 plus to 5,000 USD is still an expensive piece of equipment. But now it's in the box. You can see the price tag that is put by AVOne here. Let's take a look at the IEM. Personally, I think the Macbeth is kind of like a work of art, because if you look at the faceplate, it is really beautiful. Very, very beautiful faceplate here. And this is the standard demo set, so it's an Elitech cable, and then it also gives you the nice tips. And this tip is the Elitech Baroque tips, which is one of the best tips really. Now, this IEM has a lip, so you can actually fit most tips easily on it. And let's take a look at the cable connector itself. Now, this is a flush connector, so you can actually use almost any 2-pin cables on it, which makes life a little bit easier. Trying to get it back on, right? So it comes with the Elitech cable, and I believe you can actually get the Ambition cable, which will almost double the price. That is an expensive investment. So after all this talking, you already have the close up here. Let's have a listen. And for this listen, I will just use the N3 Ultra here. And the N3 Ultra, the reason I use it because I actually compared it with my very high-end Shuanling M9 Plus, and the difference is actually pretty small. So for the first impression of the Macbeth, I will just use this to have an understanding on how this IEM sounds. Now, my initial impression with this IEM, listening to songs from Ado and YOASOBI, I think it was really, really nice. Firstly, the sub-bass element was really good. There was very nice texture there, while still having bass impact. That's important, having the bass impact itself. Now, with all those bass, however, the sound is still very, very clear. It is more on the neutral tone of sound, and there's no like warm or anything. It's like neutral tone to the sound itself. Vocals are very clean, very clear. The mids are also very clean, very clear, very well rendered. Separation between all the instruments was really good, and positioning was excellent because I can really hear all the direction and position of the music that is playing in this IEM. Now, when it comes to the treble, I think there is good amount of excitement, good amount of energy, and it is very clean. So overall, I think the frequency response is fantastic. The timbre of it is a little bit more of a neutral side timbre, which I really like. I do feel like the vocals are still pretty good, in the sense that it's like a little bit forward, not too pushed behind, which I kind of enjoy a little bit more. Now, if there is anything that I don't quite like, maybe is certain part of the bass impact texture, but that's really about it. And utilizing this Canon N3 Ultra, I use it in the modern tube mode. I think it kind of elevates most of the problem. That being said, there is still some sibilance in the sound itself, so depending on the vocalist and the song you play, there may be some sibilance in it, which is not too much. It's actually quite minimal for this IEM. Now, the soundstage is also relatively large, so I quite like it. I believe the soundstage, at least based on my impression, is on the mid to large side for IEM of this price bracket. So overall, I think this is a very, very positive first impression after listening to like 2 to 3 songs and replaying it a few times just to understand, certain texture and certain parts of it. I think in terms of the sound quality, it is top-notch, really worthy of its price tag. We shall talk about it at the end. Of course, this is just my impression of the IEM without comparison, and comparison is where we put things into perspective. Now, this IEM is pretty expensive, so I will compare it with my Fugaku, which, if you ask me, costs like 3 times the price. But don't forget, you have to include an amplifier. So to just even things out, I will be using the Cayenne amplifier instead. This is the C92, and I'll use it in the hyper mode solid state so that it gets the best clarity overall. And then I will use my M9 Plus, which is this one here, as the depth, so that I maximize the sound quality, and then compare with my Fugaku. Give me a moment, I set everything up, and then we will do a comparison. So what I have here is a lot of money on the table. Now, this is the stack for the Forte Ears Macbeth, together with a Canon C9 and a Sennheiser M9 While on the right side is the Fugaku, together with the Canon N3 Ultra. So it's still a lot more expensive than this setup here. But the question is, how close or how far, or is the Macbeth better, right? The reason why I use the Canon here is because I find that the best sound for this particular setup here is when I'm using it in modern tube hyper mode. And the slight tubiness give an advantage and smoothens out some of that sibilance while still giving a very nice, I would say, as smooth mids to the Macbeth itself, and also makes the bass a little bit smoother to remove that texture which I didn't quite like when I was hearing in solid state mode. Overall, I think that this setup for Macbeth was fantastic, right? It is very punchy, very quick, and the treble has the bite. While using this modern tube mode, there's that slight smoothness overall, and the vocals, well, they are not too far behind with all this excitement both in the bass and the treble itself. Now, the Fugaku, where it differs is that it is, I say, a whole lot better in the mids. Only in the mids. Why do I say that? Is that the mids itself has a lot more body, it's smoother, it's more distinct, the sound is so much bigger, and not only that, I think the whole rendition at the mids level for the vocals and the instrument there were really clear. No recessed sound, anything. The mids on the Fugaku together the N3 Ultra is beautiful. However, the treble, I would say, as well, the Macbeth takes it. It takes it because there is so much bite, so much excitement there, while not having much sibilance. This is very close to the Apex SE that I tried previously, just that this has a bigger soundstage. Apex SE has a small soundstage to me. And speaking of soundstage, this one, I would say the Fugaku takes it. The Fugaku soundstage is just bigger, and Fugaku's positioning is slightly, I would say, as it spreads out a little bit more, but I find that the Macbeth is very distinct and clear, while the Fugaku is not as distinct, but because of its large soundstage, it spreads out very well. The separation is better because of the spread itself. Now, when it comes to the bass, there is a difference in rendition. I find that the bass, both are going for a different type of bass, while the Fugaku goes for a little bit, a bit rounded type of bass. That's how I put it. A rounded bass with a lot of the bass, I would say, as sub-bass feel and the mid-low bass kind of sound and rumble. It doesn't have the distinct, how say, as accurate texture. The Macbeth gives you that accurate texture. But that being said, the Fugaku beats the Macbeth in the, I would say, as naturalness of the bass itself. This feels more bass, correct? While this feels more like digital bass, or should I say, when you hit a drum and then there's some slight plasticky. But this is very slight difference, and I would say as the Macbeth impact is a lot more controlled than the one on the Fugaku. Fugaku impact, it feels like it lets the drum just continue generating the sound even though it's supposed to stop at a bass level. But interestingly, bass on the Fugaku is not as controlled as the Macbeth. However, every other frequency is very much better controlled on the Fugaku when it comes to things like the whole, I would say, prep, the whole speed of the sound, the control of it. I think that the Fugaku controls the mids and the highs very well. It's like, it feels slightly quicker, slightly faster. I don't know how to explain, but there's this speed element when you listen to music. Some earphones render it very sluggishly, while this Fugaku renders it very fast. Macbeth is very quick, but just that the Fugaku is even quicker. It's just a slight quicker, just a slight quicker, and you can feel it when you are listening to exciting songs such as those from Ado itself. Of course, if you are listening to more relaxing song, like what I usually listen from YOASOBI, except for Idol, that kind of song, then I'll say as it really doesn't matter. But exciting songs, fast beat song, you can really appreciate the Fugaku advantage itself. But that being said, the Macbeth is super close in it. It is very fast, it is very exciting, it has a lot of energy. I feel, at least based on my test here, which sometimes I get wrong, the Macbeth is probably more V-shaped than even the Fugaku itself. There is more elevated treble and there is more elevated bass. I do not know, maybe I'm wrong, because when I hear it, I do feel like the Macbeth mids are a bit more far behind, while the presence, the whole mids rendition on the Fugaku is just more forward. Now, when it comes to mids body, I just want to touch about it. At first, I thought that the Macbeth has good amount of mids and this body itself, but I find that the Fugaku's the mids are literally like tangible. So much body, so natural sounding on the Fugaku, and so big. I find that the Macbeth has more focus in the mids, while the Fugaku has less focus in the mids. But you trade that focus for a much bigger, more natural sound, and has a lot more body, while not being like warm sounding. It's very interesting. So which is better? I think it's preference. I think it's really preference. I personally feel that for the purpose of mids, the Fugaku is technically better. For the purpose of bass, I feel like the Macbeth is technically better. For the treble, I think the Macbeth is a little bit more treble focused, but I don't think it's better in treble, because I do feel like when you consider the air, the detail, everything, I feel like the Fugaku is very close, or if not the same as the Macbeth when it comes to the treble itself. It's just that it's not tuned to have more treble. But things like soundstage, the intangible stuff, I think the Fugaku is slightly better there. And that is it for my sound impressions. I just want to summarize is that the Macbeth punches very hard and very high. To me, this is actually slightly more enjoyable than the Apex. I find the Apex soundstage is really small, at least for my ears, while the Macbeth sounds pretty big. At first I thought it's big, but it's just that when you compare the Fugaku, it just feels smaller. And I find that the whole treble itself is not as extreme as the Apex. Apex is like really trebly and bitey. The Macbeth is slightly lower. But I think this is the trend, because recently I saw some poll, and the top is Apex followed by Macbeth. Both of them are very treble, and then there's Annihilator and everything on there. So I think that is the trend here. Fugaku doesn't have that. It doesn't have this bitey treble thing, which I think shapes the sound. But if you really compare side by side, it is an interesting comparison, and you can really appreciate the advantages of both systems and their earphones. So for now, I will just go on to the last part. I'll do some very quick measurements, show you on the screen, and then talk a little bit on what I think about the Macbeth at the end of the video. So I complete my comparison using the coupler behind here to actually measure the Macbeth. And you can see from the chart here. So firstly, you can see that there is quite a lot of bass energy, and the bass energy do, taper down all the way to about 600, 700, 800 hertz. It slowly slides down there and then it rises up again. Now, the notable thing is that the presence region, for vocals especially, the 1000 to 3000 region doesn't rise that much. Then you'll see that there is quite a bit of treble energy at the back. There are spikes behind. So overall, the sound itself, for the mids itself, don't feel very forward, and that is what I hear so far. It's not like super backward, but definitely not super forward. The bass itself, there is quite some low and mid bass, so it contributes to that bass factor, and then you can see the treble energy there. Now, how does it compare to the Fugaku? If I was to put the graph of the Fugaku, you can see the difference is in the mids region. The presence region of the Fugaku is really strong. While the bass region of the Fugaku, yes, there are a lot of, say, sub-bass, but it tapers down really quickly, 200, 300 hertz. It tapers down the bass really. So you do lose some of the mid-bass. So Fugaku has a lot of like low bass that, as I said just now, it doesn't feel as controlled. But, this is how the graph looks like. It has a lot of low bass, but not much of the mid-bass, which is the impact at around 90 to 200 hertz region, depending on type of song. And of course, there's less treble energy on the Fugaku, right? So that is really the difference, right? The Macbeth's tuning, I feel, is something that a lot of modern audiophiles will love. A lot of the modern IEMs recently have a lot of treble. The Apex, the Macbeth, the Annihilator, tons and tons of treble. It seems to be the case that is moving forward, and also tons and tons of bass. Technically, very V-shaped. And this Macbeth seems to also continue on this particular trend. Just that I do hope that, the mids have a little more presence there, but that's about it for me. Now, how do I feel about the Macbeth? Now, this thing is not cheap. Once again, going back to its original price, 6,000 Sing dollars, or about, I believe, 4,000 plus USD. It is a very expensive IEM. However, unlike the Fugaku, the advantage of the Macbeth, just like any other IEM, is that you can use any pairing to show up some differences. Put in like the Canon C200 running on tube mode, you get a little bit more body, a little bit more mids, which will enhance your listening experience. The bass sound signature on the Macbeth, I feel, is really, really good. I mean, if you don't compare, you would have think that the soundstage is really nice, separation was really good, bass was really great, mids was still very nice, very clean, very clear, and a lot of energy still. And then the treble is just engaging, while sibilance is not a lot. That being said, if you do compare the Fugaku, you feel some difference. But overall, do I think that Macbeth is weaker than the Fugaku? Not really, especially not $10,000 difference, right? The tuning is very different though, and if you like the Fugaku, you like the Fugaku. You like the Macbeth, you like the Macbeth, and most likely you may not like both of them because of the tuning difference. However, I think that the Macbeth tuning is more aligned to a lot of the modern tunings, which I think it is more exciting to listen, more fun to listen, and also if you were to listen across multiple IEMs, the more normal sound today done very well. So the Macbeth to me is a win, especially for this price range. I don't have much complaints to it, except for, as I said again, a little bit of sibilance, and the bass texture is not what I really, really like for the impact part of things. But the bass rumble, everything was great. That's really about it. This is the first look of the Macbeth IEM, and I think this is a fantastic piece of equipment. Do try it. Well, in Singapore, you can try it at AVOne. They have a demo set, and this is the one I loaned. Do try it there, and I think you will truly enjoy it. And not only that, I think Macbeth has one of the nicest faceplate, which is worth something. That's about it. I hope to see you guys again. Bye bye.